When I entered the bar on Friday, I noticed Jack almost immediately and went over to hug him as awkwardly as men do. "Damn it, Jack," I exclaimed. "It's been 10 years, and yet I recognized you right away. You haven't changed a bit." "So are you," he replied. "I heard that you got married. Family life seems to be good for you." We found an office in a quiet corner and ordered a couple of beers. We were roommates and good friends in college, but we split up after graduation. Jack got a job in another city, but I stayed in Chicago. We pretty much lost touch with each other until I accidentally found out that he came back here a couple of years ago to get a job in the trade. "And how are you?" I asked. "Why didn't you get married?" I remembered that Jack was on a pretty active search back in college. He never had any problems with girlfriends, but he never seemed to stay with them for long. "I guess I'm not as lucky as you," he said with a smile, but when he spoke, there seemed to be a hint of pain in his eyes. I was trying to lighten the mood. "That's all your problem, playboys," I joked. "Once you start looking, you can't stop." It was clear from his expression that my joke had offended him. He shook his head gloomily. "Oh, I tried to find a wife, but when it came to the greatest love in the world, I was catastrophically unlucky." "Is there a problem?" "It's funny that you should ask that," he said. I could tell that something was really sharpening him, so I sat down in the office more comfortably and said, "Why don't you tell me about it?" He signaled the waitress to bring us another one, and after she did, he began his story. "It all started about a month ago. The day started crazily, which is normal in the commodity market. But around noon, my boss came in with a woman in tow. 'This is Carla,' he said. 'She will work in your field. I want you to show her everything and help her get started.' I must say that when I looked at her, something happened to me. I've dated a lot of attractive women, but none of them have ever influenced me as much as this one. It was strange. She wasn't pretty by model standards, and her clothes weren't particularly revealing, but something about her just knocked me off my feet. I have never believed in love at first sight or the idea that there is only one woman for a man. But Carla made me feel like a teenage boy for the first time. It was amazing and confusing, and I felt completely helpless. I sat down next to her to discuss what she needed to know about work here. It didn't take me long to see that she was very bright and incredibly attractive. It's a combination that has always attracted me. I tried not to look at her when I was talking, but I think I didn't always succeed. She didn't seem bothered by it. She just listened attentively to everything I had to say, making notes in her notebook. After spending some time with her, I offered to do some work on my own. "And then we can have lunch together, and I'll answer any questions you have," I told her. I usually don't go on a date with colleagues from the office. It creates problems. But I already knew that in the case of Carla, I was going to break my rule. I was hoping to find out more about her over lunch. I have already noted the absence of her wedding ring, but it looked like she might have had it in the past, so I assumed she was divorced. However, while we were eating, I couldn't find out more about her because she only wanted to talk about me and what I was doing at work. When an attractive woman is constantly asking questions about you, it's hard not to feel flattered, and before I knew it, lunch was over. Despite the fact that I didn't get to know Carla better, I was very pleased to be with her. Things got bad that day when Hank Malone walked in. Hank is my biggest competitor at work. We were accepted at the same time, and our careers ran parallel. But Hank didn't think so. He was always bragging about his achievements, and he always had some big job that would supposedly bring him a fat bonus. His selfishness is also not limited to work. He likes to brag about his conquests, and he's not shy about going on dates with people at work. From what I can tell, he attracted the attention of a number of women in the office, leaving several broken hearts in the process. So I wasn't happy when Hank suddenly showed up and introduced himself to Carla. "If you need to know anything, just come to me," he said in his loud voice. "I am closely connected with the top management, so if you need anything, I can arrange it." I gritted my teeth at his obvious ploy, but I couldn't say anything about how I felt that wouldn't make me sound like a jealous schoolboy. To make matters worse, Carla seemed to believe it implicitly. She thanked him warmly and promised to call him. Trading goods can become quite tedious, and for many of us it is common practice to stop by a nearby pub after work to relax before heading home. I mentioned this to Carla, and she agreed to come. So after we closed the deals for the day, I took Carla to our favorite place to get our throats wet and introduced her to the rest of the gang. Everything was going well until Frank showed up. He made his way through the group, sat down next to Carla, and continued to monopolize her attention. Even with all the noisy chatter in the pub, it was easy to hear Frank bragging about himself and his bright prospects. Moreover, Carla seemed to be hanging on his every word. But before she left, Carla leaned over and thanked me for feeling welcome on her first day at work. It made me feel a little better. The rest of the week went pretty much the same way. Carla and I didn't have lunch together every day, but we often took a coffee break together. Similarly, some days Carla didn't go to the pub with us, but when she did, she was an avid listener, turning on only to ask an insightful question. Of course, Hank continued to hover around her like a bee around a flower. It should have been clear to Carla that he was stalking her, but she wasn't trying to cool him down. Discouraged me. Once we visited the toilet at the same time, and he did not miss the opportunity to tell me about his claims against Carla. "She's eating out of my hands," he shouted. "I'll give her a tour of my bedroom soon, if you know what I mean," he said with a grin. Strangely, I found Hank's bragging reassuring. The way he spoke showed that Carla had not succumbed to his obsessive treatment, and it made me think that I still had a chance with her. In fact, I felt that my relationship with Carla was developing, although it was happening in a strange way. For example, at first she showed great interest in me, my work, and my lifestyle, always encouraging me to talk about myself. She probably found out more about me than a few old girlfriends I've been dating for months. However, despite her interest, she seemed restrained and cautious about me, as if she couldn't stop being cautious. I was going crazy trying to figure out what I had said or done to cause such a reaction. But after a while, to my great relief and admiration, her attitude seemed to change significantly. She began to relax and seemed to feel much more at ease with me. I began to perceive some of those little signals that a woman uses when she says, "I'm interested, I like you." All of this would have been very encouraging if it hadn't been for the fact that she continued to pay too much attention to Hank. I couldn't understand it. We just had a great little conversation, and when Hank shows up, she drops everything to listen to him. Of course, Hank never missed an opportunity to rub my nose in telling me how much time Carla spent with him. "Admit it, buddy. You may be her friend, but she gets pleasure from me. I'm going to stick my nose up her skirt in no time. Just wait and see," he boasted. I didn't believe him, but I couldn't deny that Carla seemed to be dividing her time between the two of us. I'm not stupid when it comes to women. I know how to make them laugh, how to flatter them without being obvious, flirt without being rude, and generally how to interact with them in a way that keeps them interested. I agree to admit that I used all my tricks on Carla to get her attention to me. In the past, when I did it, it was kind of a game for me. But with Carla, everything was deadly serious. Before, I didn't care if I won or lost, but now it was like a matter of life and death, and I desperately wanted to keep this relationship alive. What made it even more confusing was that all the usual signs I got from her said that my efforts were working, that she was responding positively to my romantic onslaught. But she still wouldn't let Hank resign. One day, I found out from my sources in the office that Hank had asked Carla out on a date, and she turned him down. I decided it was time to make my own move. If nothing else, at least I can figure out if Carla is really interested in me or not. That's why I went to her workplace late at night. "Hi, Carla," I said casually. "Why don't you and I have a bite to eat after work?" "With a gang in a pub? What is it?" she asked. "No, just you and me," I said. "I want to talk about something, and the pub is too noisy." "I do not know if this is a good idea," she replied hesitantly. "It's exactly the same as if we went out with the rest of the gang," I assured her. "It's just going to be a little easier to talk." "Well, okay," she said, and I had to do my best not to jump up in excitement at the prospect of being alone with her. I took her to a great place nearby, very quiet and discreet, candles on the table, cute but not too fancy. Over dinner, we talked a little bit about the office and our responsibilities. Then I gradually moved on to discussing how well she fits into our group, what a huge contribution she has made to the results of our work, and how much everyone likes her. I could tell she liked it. Then I went on to talk about how I would enjoy working with her, how she made the job easier, and how sweetly she smiles and laughs. "The thing is, Carla, it's hard for me to think of you as a colleague," I told her sincerely. "Actually, I want to get to know you better, because I have feelings for you." She exclaimed softly, "Oh, and instinctively reached out to grab mine and squeeze it. But then a contradictory expression appeared on her face, and she let me go. I really like you too, Jack, but I don't know if this is a good idea. There are a lot of things you don't know about me, things that can make you feel differently about me. Now I reached across the table and took her hands in mine. I don't care what you've had in the past, I said seriously. I see you every day at work and I know what kind of person you are. I also know how I feel when I'm with you. Her eyes were burning brightly, and for a moment I thought she was going to lean over the table and close the deal with a kiss. But at the last moment, she seemed to regain control of herself and retreated. I can't deny that I've been thinking about you a lot too, she said, but it's all happening too fast for me to realize. Please don't push me, give me some time. I looked into her eyes. I'll wait as long as you want, I promised. It's worth waiting for you. I thought again that she was going to say something, but again she restrained herself. Soon after, she went home. Did I just take a giant step forward, or did I blow everything up completely? I wondered when I took a taxi back to my apartment. The next day, of course, she went to lunch with Hank, and I gritted my teeth in frustration, continuing to eat a sandwich at my workplace. On Friday evening, we all returned to the pub and the drinks flowed a little more freely than usual, in honor of the very successful deal we had managed to conclude. As the evening wore on, more and more people left until Carla and I were alone. I think I drank more than I needed to, because I did what I promised myself I wouldn't do. Not put pressure on Carla. You don't know me, she said, a little indistinctly. I'm not the woman you think I am. I know exactly what kind of woman you are. You are the most amazing, attractive woman I have ever met, and I can't ask for more, I said firmly. Then, mixing emotions and intoxication, I grabbed her by the neck, pulled her to me and kissed her hard on the lips. She resisted for a second. Then her whole body seemed to give up. She leaned towards me and kissed me back with equal fervor. Our tongues explored each other, and we enjoyed the sensuality of the moment, until some wise man at another table made a joke about us going to the room. Carla stepped back and looked at me excitedly. Jack, I have to go. She hurried off, leaving me sitting there wondering what had just happened. Whatever it was, I decided I was more determined than ever. That kiss told me more about her real feelings than if she had said or done anything. The next week, I gave her time, hardly talking to her. I caught her looking at me several times, but I acted as if I hadn't noticed. Let her feel what it means to be unsure of what's going on, I thought. I decided that I would make my move on Thursday, and she made it easier for me. After lunch, she came up to me, and it was clear that she was not the confident, knowledgeable woman I was used to. Jack, about what happened last Friday. I'm sorry if I did. Not here, I interrupted her. If you want to talk, let's do it over dinner. I threw her off balance, and she hesitated a little. Then she seemed to make a decision, and her eyes signaled agreement. All right, she said, at dinner. I didn't answer, but inside I was thrilled. When the working day finally ended, I went to her workplace. Are you ready? I asked briefly, and she nodded obediently. I took her by the hand and led her out of the building to the curb, where I stopped a taxi. She got into it without hesitation, and we drove in silence for most of the way. Finally, she looked around and asked, "Where are we going?" "To my house," I said. "I'll cook dinner for you." She nodded as if this was what she had been expecting all along. When we got to my building, I took her arm, and she let me lead her without protest. We rode in silence in the elevator. When I let her into my apartment and closed the door, she looked at me with a combination of agreement and expectation, and I had no choice. I hugged her and kissed her passionately. Anyway, she returned the kiss with even more passion. Then we tore off each other's clothes, desperately trying to establish as close contact with each other as possible. With every piece of clothing she lost, the body that opened up confirmed the sensual promise that I knew she had had since our first meeting. Simply put, she was the most desirable woman I've ever seen. We left our clothes scattered all over the floor when I brought her to my bedroom. Then I rolled away and got out of bed. "Wait here," I said, and walked over to my desk in the living room. When I returned, I brought a small box. "This is for you," I said. She looked worried. "I can't accept a gift from you, Jack," she said. "Just take a look." I begged. Opening the box, she found a thin gold necklace, where a small piece of jewelry made of two elaborately intertwined different metals hung on a chain. "It's amazing," she said. "What is it?" "It's a Celtic knot. The two strands intertwine, forming an endless cycle. I bought it because it makes me think about how you intertwined with my life. Everything reminds me of you, and I can't do anything without thinking about you." She held her breath. "That's fine, Jack, but I can't." I interrupted her. "It's a fairly common design, so wearing it won't mean anything to anyone, but you'll know what it means to me," I told her. "Please put it on for me." I took it from her, wrapped it around her neck, and fastened it. She got up and went to the mirror to look at him. "It's really beautiful," she murmured. Then she turned around and kissed me. "Thanks, Jack." Suddenly, her gaze landed on my bedside clock, and she gasped. "Damn, I lost track of time. I have to go home. Tomorrow is going to be a big day." She dressed quickly and headed for the door, stopping to kiss me and thank me again for the necklace and for this evening. When she left, I felt a strange combination of elation at the deepening of our relationship and disappointment at her departure. There was no denying that I had fallen deeply in love with her. The next day, I came to work with a happy heart, wanting to see her again. I arrived early, but she still wasn't there even after the usual start time. As soon as it became obvious that this was not a few minutes late, I was seized with paranoia. Was she upset about what happened last night? Has she decided she doesn't want to see me anymore? Did she quit her job? I didn't feel any better when Hank came in and quickly resumed his frenzied bragging. I listened to him absently until he said, "Hey, guess what happened? Carla asked me to meet her here this morning." "Sorry, Jack. It looks like the best man has won again." Before I could think about what he said and what it meant, Carla stepped through the doorway. She was followed by a man in a rumpled suit and a Chicago police uniform. A man in a suit came up to Hank and me and asked, "Which one of you is Hank Malone?" Hank stared at him in surprise. "I'm Hank Malone. And who the hell are you?" The man pulled back the hem of his jacket to reveal a badge attached to an inner pocket. "I'm Detective Richard O'Brien of the Chicago Police Department. You are under arrest on charges of fraud and insider trading. You have the right to an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court." When a uniformed policeman came forward to handcuff him, Hank started screaming, "This is bullshit. I didn't do anything. You can't arrest me." His words had no effect on either of the two officers who led the protesting mediator to the door. "Detective," he turned to Carla and said, "Thanks for everything. We'll be in touch." I could hear Hank's screams all down the hall. I turned to Carla in shock. "What just happened?" "Please sit down, Jack, and let me explain. I told you that I'm not the woman you think I am. I'm an investigator from a security firm that specializes in white-collar crimes. Your company contacted us to help identify the source of some suspicious trade that they discovered. We agreed to send an undercover investigator, and that's how I came to work here." She looked at me apologetically. "You're not going to like this part, Jack. We had two suspects, you and Hank. So I was asked to spend as much time as possible with both of you to try to determine which one of you was involved. I felt all the happiness drain out of me. So all the time we spent together, what we said last night, was it all just a pretense?" "No," she said decisively. "At first I wasn't sure about you, but after a week it became obvious that you were clean." She looked at the floor. "At that moment, I should have turned all my attention to Hank, but I found out that I really liked you, and I didn't want to stop spending time with you. Besides, it was obvious how you felt about me, and I don't think any living woman doesn't like being desired. You were sweet, funny, and I didn't want to lose that." She lowered her head. "Anyway, the point is, I lied to you. I let you think that I was one person, while I was something completely different. I won't blame you if you hate me. They say that hope, thrown on the ground, will be reborn again. I knew that I could feel it growing in me. But do you have feelings for me?" I asked. "Did you feel the same way I did?" She nodded. "Then none of this matters." I shouted. "I don't care if you're a policeman or a commodity trader or something else. I just want to be with you. Now that you've completed your investigation, you don't have to pretend anymore. There is nothing that separates us anymore." With that, I went over and kissed her hard, and she kissed me and clung to me with the same passion. But after we got out of the embrace, she still couldn't look at me. There's something else, she said, almost in a whisper. I'm married. I have a husband and a house in the suburbs. I staggered. The wind knocked the wind out of me. Now she had a tense expression on her face. I have feelings for you, Jack, and I'd be lying if I didn't admit that last night was wonderful. But I still love my husband, and I can't just walk away from him. I have to go back and work on our marriage, try to rekindle the feelings I had for him. I just have to, Jack. She stood up. I'm sorry, Jack, for everything. The best thing you can do is forget about me and find someone you can love and, more importantly, trust. I'm not that woman. At least I tried to warn you. She went to the door, but then turned back with an expression of shame on her face. My name isn't even Carla, she said and left. Jack drained his beer and put the mug down on the table. That's why I said that I have the greatest love in the world. I was stunned. So when did all this happen? He shook his head in despair. This morning. She walked out of my life this very morning. As I drove, I couldn't stop thinking about Jack's story. When I got home, I didn't feel like eating, so I took a beer out of the fridge and sat down, waiting for Bella. She has been working very hard lately, so I rarely found her at home. Finally, I heard her car pull into the garage. When she came in the door and saw me, she smiled and said, "Oh, dear. What a day I've had. But I have good news for you. We have finally finished this big project that I have been working on for so long. I won't be so busy anymore." I didn't say anything. Actually, she continued, that's what I want to talk to you about. I think I might quit my job. I've really been feeling exhausted lately, and I know I've been neglecting you. We need to spend more time together. Take that vacation that we've been putting off. Maybe we could even talk about having kids the way you wanted. All this is starting to sound very attractive to me. When I didn't answer, Bella said with an apologetic expression on her face. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm chatting about my job and my problems, and I haven't even asked you about your day. That's what I'm going to work on, to really pay attention to you the way I did when we first got married. I think my silence became disturbing to her, and she began nervously fingering a small Celtic knot hanging on a chain around her neck. So you met your old college roommate today? Did anything interesting happen in his life? What is it? She asked. I stood up and folded my arms across my chest. In a voice full of bitterness and despair, I said, It's funny that you should ask that.